All right, so it's Monday, it's October 6th. This is the Margaret Planning Commission meeting. It's about 7:04 p.m. So we'll call the meeting to order, and I guess I will take attendance. So I'm Adam Crown, I'm here. Ralph Hirschwall is the vice chair. President here. Jennifer Kyle
Here.
Heidi Boyce.
Here.
Aaron Graves. Here. Brian Kinslow. Here. Todd Bresty here. David Greenberg. Here. Anyone I missed? And we have Emily Donald from the town, from the borough, and Adam Chancellor from the planning commission. And on the phone, we have Kevin Walsh, the zoning officer for the borough. The agenda this evening is as follows. First, we'll do our announcements, chair's update, and then the MC PC update. We will then discuss the minutes and whether we approve minutes from our September 8th meeting. We have a presentation this evening, a tentative sketch plan for 640 Montgomery Avenue, which is the former Rite Aid site on Montgomery Avenue. So we have a presentation from the property owner on that as a third business. Then we have open discussion for the plan commission on engagement opportunities with the public, community engagement opportunities, and potential zoning ordinance amendments, in particular for Montgomery Avenue. And then we'll take public comment, up to 3 minutes per person. I have a sign-in sheet if you would like to sign in for public comment. We'll pass that around so that we can call on everyone. And after we have taken public comment, we will adjourn the meeting. Any questions? So I will you can pass it. So between now and last month, the Borough Council provided further email to me asking us to do additional research on the topics related to housing development, transferring development, zoning, and so on. I think I forwarded you some of that material, and then there was some also discussion with council members via email about particular topics. So I'm going to give you a debrief on some of the things that I've been doing this month related to that research that will then apply on that discussion portion. So the first, today I had a conversation for a little over an hour with Ed Ridgway, who's the president of the Narberth Business Association. It has also organized the events in downtown Narberth for many years. And then he's also, his business, he's a realtor as well. So he has very familiar with the housing demand in Narberth and both the business climate in the downtown as well as the situation with housing. So we had a long discussion, and I'm not going to go through it all tonight. And we'll speak again, and it will come to bear more also a discussion around downtown. But one of the things that he remarked upon was from their perspective, from the business perspective, it is generally a good thing to have more people to be shopping and patronizing businesses. So additional people living in the borough would be a benefit for the business climate. And that Montgomery Avenue is probably a very good place for density and height, being the wide commercial corridor that it is. One of the perhaps the most appropriate place in the borough for that kind of development. And then he had a lot of thoughts on the downtown and things that we could do in particular focused on downtown related to business and the retail community. So happy to follow up individually with all of you about that later. I did a bunch of, I was asked to basically talk or provide information on how many people in the town in the borough of Narberth are renters versus owners. So the best available data from that is from 2023. It's the 5-year backwards look that is done by the American Community Survey of the U.S. Census Bureau. So it's table B25008 is the counts the number of people in town and then whether they own their housing unit or rent a housing unit. So the people that are housed in Narberth. So I was asked to compare that to Ardmore Media and Doylestown and the real sort of communities. So Narberth in that data table is 4,482 residents, of which 68% are living in a housing unit they own as a household, and 32% are living in a dwelling unit that they rent as a household. So roughly 2 to 1 own to rent for the residents. Ardmore is 14,000 residents, but basically the same percentage, 67% owners and 33% renters. So very similar to Narberth, but about 3 times bigger. Media is 5,700 people, 1,699. It is 48% owners and 52% renters. So it's a higher percentage of renters in Media than Narberth, a little bit bigger. And of course, that's a bigger downtown, it's the county seat. Doylestown is also the county seat of Bucks County, 7,833 is the estimated population in housing, of which 59% of renters and 41% are, 59% of owners and 41% of renters. So the takeaway really is that Narberth and Ardmore are very similar in terms of proportion of homeownership, but Ardmore is 3 times bigger. And then Media and Doylestown as comparable communities are, they actually have higher rental rates than Narberth does. I was asked about the population change. Of course, this is an official estimate. It's not, and we could work with the county on, describing some of the methodology, but essentially, if over the next 10 years we added, and of course, 2023 was 2 years ago, so basically 12 years of data projected forward, if we added 30 homes, because we are building a few at a time right now, and about 200 apartments, we would add about 460 residents, which would be a 10% increase for the borough. And that would take our ownership rate to about 64% from 68%, and our rental rate from 32% to 36%. So it's basically a shift of 45%. So that is probably the best case for population growth of the borough is about 10%, which would still be more than 400 people fewer than the 1950 population. So we would still be off of our peak by more than 5%. I also interviewed Kim Crowder, who's the Senior Vice President of Real Estate Development for HGC Mid-Atlantic. This is about the topic specifically of affordable housing. HGC Mid-Atlantic is an affordable housing developer in our region. Their typical project is approximately 50 to 60 units. Affordable housing is housing that would be available for people at the lower end of the income spectrum, down to 20 to 30% of area median income, up to about 80%, no more than 80% of median income. But they do develop mixed income projects that houses, apartment buildings that have market rate units all the way down to low income units. So they use low income housing tax credits, which are federal tax credit that the states control. It's a block of tax credit that competitively bid out once a year. Last year, there were, I want to say there were 70 applications, 28 awards, half of that to Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. So there's only 14 awards for the rest of the state last year. It's very competitive. It's scored by points based on how much housing you provide for low-income residents. The tax credits pay for the low-income housing. They're sold primarily to banks that purchase them to comply with the Community Reinvestment Act requirements for investing in local communities. A dollar tax credit right now is selling for about 85 cents on the low end to as much as 92 cents. So you don't get dollar for dollar. And the bank, of course, uses those to retire their federal tax burden. And one of the things that I learned from Kim was, from their perspective, they often get the land donated for these projects from a nonprofit or a municipality or a government unit, maybe even a religious organization. But somebody provides the land for the project. When they purchase land, the economics are such that you probably would never go higher than 1 million for a parcel with approximately 60 housing units on it. So it gives you a sense of the cost that land imposes on affordable housing developments and the threshold for what's feasible or not. I also corresponded via email with the City of Philadelphia Planning and Development Department, Ataya Brockington, about their mixed income neighborhood zoning overlay that requires affordable housing units when you build 10 or more units, and this is in parts of the City of Philadelphia. So they provided the paperwork that they use for their developers and some additional information on how they administer it. It's administered directly by the city. So the building owners provide their documentation to the city that keeps them on file. And I believe that the affordable units are controlled by a deed restriction that is attached to the parcel and development. So we're following, as a region that to see whether that is successful at producing mixed income housing. So they have market rate units in the project, but a certain number of the units in the project have to be available to low income residents. I also was asked by the Borough Council to look at whether in discussions around the parking ratio for properties, we wanted to compel to lower a parking rate, you had to join the SEPTA multifamily building transit pass program. So I corresponded with Gabrielle Cristera at SEPTA, and she provided the documentation for that program. They haven't implemented it yet with the building. They have passes that they use for businesses and universities, but they're very excited to start enrolling multifamily buildings. It's a little complicated to me, the pricing. If I understand it correctly, basically, you start at $30 per unit, per housing unit, or you can cover all the residents in the building, one of the two. And then your price can never go up by more than 15% in a 6-month period, but you can calibrate it to the actual number of swipes on trains and buses. And you pay per swipe and per ride on the train. And you can, and they'll give you a list of how many trips we're taking. The program, when it's applied to businesses, what they see is that transit ridership increased per eligible participant by 40% in the first year. So they do expect that it does help to increase ridership. Okay. Going back to housing for median income, to put this in perspective, there's different tables that are used depending on which agency, but it looks like the 80th percentile for Montgomery County median income for a single person household last year was $64,250. 2-person household, $73,400. 3 people, $82,600. And 4 people, $91,750. So that's giving you a sense of what the 80th percentile is. Meaning at 100%, you would be half the people would make more than that, and half the people would make less than that. So this is more than half of the people would be above this income threshold. And this 80% is kind of the working limit for what we would call workforce housing. It's intended to be that, for example, this is about a typical classroom teacher, police officer, person in the county, and so on, would all make more than more than this threshold. So it's intended to, or bus drivers. It's like, that's below that mark would be other professions probably. The rent then for 1 person would be about $1,600, including utilities. 2 people, $1,835. 3 people, $2,065, and 4 people, about $2,300, again, including utilities. I was also asked to reach out to the Valley Regional Planning Commission, DVRPC, and they provided me with a number of studies about housing affordability. So I won't, go through all this in the interest of time. I can forward the studies to the members of the Planning Commission and, of course, make them available to Borough Council. Essentially, the first study they provided said that in 2023, a national study conducted by Up for Growth estimated that the Philadelphia Consolidated Metropolitan Statistical Area had a shortage of 80,000 homes in 2021. And there was a quote in the study that says, in most suburbs, NIMBYism is proving effective at preserving exclusionary zoning, and burdensome regulatory restrictions keeping up with housing demand is nearly impossible. The 2023 Housing Needs Snapshot from Montgomery County, compiled by the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania, described the critical shortage of affordable homes, that for every 100 extremely low-income families, seniors, and people with disabilities renting in Montgomery County, only 22 affordable rental homes are available. So it's 22 homes for 100 people or 100 families. The Pew Research Center 2025 published a study, Pennsylvania's lack of building has contributed to a housing shortage and hurt affordability. DVRPC writes the key takeaway is that Philadelphia and its suburbs present a clear picture of the relationship between home construction and housing prices. The counties that issued the most permits for housing saw the slowest rent growth. Elsewhere, cities with major land use reform, such as Minneapolis and Houston, experienced slower rent growth than Pennsylvania between 2017 and 2023. Anyway, so 75% of housing permits in Montgomery County were issued for single-family homes. Research basically suggests that, again, that more production and lower homes at a metropolitan level. Another key takeaway from the 2023 Pew study is that adding new housing supply slows rent growth, both nearby and regionally, by reducing competition among tenants for each available home, thereby lowering displacement pressures. Again, that was based on data from Minneapolis, New Rochelle, Portland, and Tysons. Anyway, and they give some other additional links. For TOD best zoning, they refer to the Montgomery County TOD model ordinance that Adam Chance provided us, which classifies Norwood as a town center environment, and which uses Cricket Flats and Ardmore and Madison Lansdale Station as two examples of transit supported development in this context. I have pictures of those developments. But Cricket Flats is, I think, a 7-story building, and Ardmore was 77 luxury apartments. They also provided SEPTA's transit-oriented community guidelines, which again defines Norwood as a town center. And SEPTA says building heights vary in town centers, with taller buildings closer to the town center and building height reducing farther away, with most new buildings 5 stories or more. And they also provided links to New Jersey's transit-friendly planning guide and New Jersey Transit's gentle density and mixed single housing in New Jersey report. So that is some of the work that I was doing this month around this topic of the amount of housing being provided in the region, the affordability of housing, strategies to provide affordable housing, developer perspectives, and various stakeholders. Any questions? No. Okay. I will. I think it concludes my summary. So the next item on the agenda is the update from the Montgomery County Planning Commission.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'm not seeing on here on the agenda anything for recodification, so I'll just give an update on that. So Todd Bressi and I have been working on this for, over the summer, and we're coming to a conclusion, at least in our draft form. So today we finally have merged our drafts together. So this includes all of the zoning districts, which are kind of the quarterback, building types having a more prominent role with the design standards and other required standards kind of included under the building types. And then we're kind of putting to the side any policy questions. But yeah, we're going to review on Wednesday the merged draft, and then have, an internal committee kind of review it further. But yeah, next planning commission meeting, we will have it for you guys to review. So we are making progress. I know we've been talking about it for a bit of time. Beyond that, we do have the Lower Merion and Narberth active transportation plan that we're working on. So we have a steering committee meeting on that at the end of this month. And yeah, from the feedback that we received from that, we'll go into the final plan, and then that will be released to the public. So that's moving along. And those are my main updates at this time. Any questions?
Montgomery quarter study.
Yeah, so that quarter study, I've asked around, and we're not getting any updates ourselves on that, which is very frustrating. I mean, I'm going to continue to kind of push for that, but yeah, we're not getting we have not been involved in that, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Adam? Well, thanks again for the work on the recodification. We'll have to reserve enough time to discuss that when it's ready. Look forward to it. I know it's been a big effort, so I really appreciate everyone's time put into that. All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the September 8th meeting minutes that were in the agenda packet. And
Second.
seconds, there's a motion to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same. Motion carries unanimously. All right, the third item on our agenda is the presentation of the sketch plan for 640 Montgomery Avenue. So, applicant. Okay,
Yes,
you introduce yourself, please?
I can. Good evening, everybody.
Pardon?
Before we start, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
So is this a formal sketch plan submission, like a real land development application?
as far as I know, yes.
This is a tentative sketch plan.
Right,
Yes.
that would be the first step in the land development application.
Yeah.
So there in the code, there's provisions for there to be a tentative sketch plan before.
So it's not a formal.
Yeah, so it's not formal as of
Okay,
yet.
but we do take paperwork on it, right?
We do take paperwork and yeah. So for example, I didn't do a formal review. I just kind of did a memo on this particular.
The only reason I asked this
Yeah.
is, when an application is a formal application, usually the borough staff establishes a schedule.
Yeah.
Review, and so if this isn't, then I assume there's no then schedule, because this isn't a formal.
Correct.
But there's no schedule. This isn't a full
It doesn't start the
plan.
clock.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
clock, right?
Yeah.
That-
Yeah.
I was wondering.
No clock,
It's not
right,
clock,
yes.
right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
The Adam Rosenzweig Action Realty, developer representing 640 Montgomery Avenue, especially known as the Rite Aid Building, former Rite Aid Building. No, Todd, to answer your question, to properly get on the agenda and make a formal or informal presentation, I did file an application for a tentative sketch plan via land development application, but it is not a full application until we have more discussion with the neighbors and with the planning commission here today. So it was on one of the televisions.
Yep, I can bring it up.
Okay. Looking, I guess it's the same on both. Oh, wait 1 second, just to bring us, everybody come up together.
Well, it looks like it closed out.
Well, while she's pulling it up, a little bit of background. The Rite Aid building has been there since I think the very early 90s. 5 years ago, I came in and made a presentation, an application to redevelop the former Albrecht's building. That was a process that we went through, the public process, 20 meetings with the planning commission, met with their neighbors, went back and met with the planning commission and all the appropriate parties with Narberth Council and borough and commissions. And we were very proud of the product that we delivered. We delivered what we showed everybody on the screen, starting into it that we built it. I think it's a nice addition to the community, built with high-end finishes on the exterior to look good, something to be proud of that, we are, and I hope the borough is as well. And frankly, we'd like to replicate that process on where Rite Aid stands today. What you're looking at on the screen today, more or less, there's two screens, I'm just gonna walk, sorry, Heidi. What you see on the screen is the existing Narberth Square on the lower right-hand side. And on the upper side, if you can see, is a two-dimensional top-down view of what a floor plan would look like on a proposed new building. What you may or may not be able to see is there is a red sketch line, I don't know if Ellen, you can zoom in, please,
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
existing Rite Aid footprint. So the existing Rite Aid footprint today, I'm using rough numbers, is like 13,260 square feet. And the property footprint that we're looking at today is 140 feet less. So we're basically keeping more or less the same footprint. Instead of being a rectangle like a sheet of paper, we're making it a little bit more narrow, a little bit longer, and making it an L. But it's the same, essentially the same footprint. You can see where the loading dock is in the back. You can see where we extend further back by about, I think it's roughly 15 feet beyond the wall of the loading dock today. And what we're proposing is to keep the same setback line that the building canopy has, to the building has, not even the canopy today, on the sidewalk. And proposing a 4-story building with a partial 5th story that would contain 42 units and ground floor retail that fronts the entire Montgomery Avenue frontage. The heights today in the 5E district are capped at 45 feet. Our existing project across the parking lot is at 45 feet. The existing code allows for mixed use, and the ground floor has to be completely retail. And what we're asking for is to make just the retail component face Montgomery, due to the positioning of the building against Montgomery Avenue and having an existing vacancy now. It's tough to lease small shop space that far in off Montgomery Avenue. So we will be looking for a waiver to have residential on the ground floor, which today is not per code. The second thing we would be looking to do is, even though we're at 45 feet for the 4th floor, you're only allowed to have 3 total floors. But the only difference is we're asking for 4 floors versus 3. The height wouldn't change facing Montgomery, nor would the height change on the back. Can we go to the next page, Emily, please? To the portion of the building that's facing the Shirley Road residence. So we're stepping it back down to a 45-foot cap that runs on that called parallel path area behind, or should I say abutting the Shirley Road residence, as you can see right there. Can you just scroll down just a little bit, please? You can see where that little L is. See where in the 1st floor, it's called back a house for the residents in the building, and then on the 2nd floor, there's 2 units. So that area where it would butt up against Shirley Road, which by the way, the setback's 25 feet, we're even further back than the setback is in terms of our building. So we're not only honoring the setback, but adding more dimensions beyond the setback to it. And then the third thing that we're asking for is a partial 5th floor that would be, call it on the long portion perpendicular to Montgomery Avenue. And 2 things. One, we want to honor the height along Montgomery Avenue. So we voluntarily set back the building approximately 25, 30 feet off of Montgomery Avenue. And there's a photo, we can scroll down in the package, actually, I believe it's on the last page. That building height is but the same as the adjacent medical office building. So even though we're 4 feet, we can go back and look at the heights in a minute, but if you look there, it's essentially the same height as the existing building that's next door. So from a juxtaposition of size, it's no different than what's there. And the trees that you see today are existing and are real. They're way higher than 45 feet. I don't have the exact measurements because I don't have a tape measure that long, but they're 55 to 65 feet in the air that exists today, both in front of our existing Narva Square and 2 that will be in front of this building as well. One of which is not shown here, so we can see the exact scope against the existing office building, but there is another big tree that sits today in that area. And we would try to design it, we would design it in the same fashion to mirror as closely as possible the existing building with a nice brick, nice limestone finish. To have it be part of the fabric. And we look forward to working with everybody through the process here today and for the coming weeks and months.
Okay, thank you. We very late in the agenda packets, not just cast aspersions on anything, but we got review letters from the county and from I think the borough zoning officer as well.
Yes.
I personally haven't had time to read them yet, so yeah, I mean, but I'm pretty. Actually, I think I did read the county one, so yeah. Does anyone want to comment on those letters? Okay. Well, open the floor.
I mean, my main comment really was around the height, and I agree with you that 45 feet, that's what the existing code allows, but only up to 3 floors. So I think it makes sense to allow for either a change to the zoning code or a variance for 4 floors up to 45 feet. That's in line with, as you're pointing out, other buildings on the street. I think 45 feet can accommodate a 4-story building, so that makes perfect sense. When it came to the fifth floor, that's really up to the planning commission. From a county perspective, I thought there might be potential for bonuses to allow for that additional height. We've talked a lot about affordable housing over the past series of meetings. And as we're looking at this district as well, perhaps that could be a bonus for fifth, a 5th story of height, 10% units affordable, but that's completely up to the planning commission. That was just a thought. There's also the green building bonus as well. So that could be considered for a 5th story of height. But yeah, I kind of let that be up to the planning commission. That was just kind of my recommendation. I also looked back at your previous plan for the corner, the phase 1, and I just noticed that you didn't count the frontage for this building since it was a Rite Aid towards the street tree requirement. So I thought it might make sense to, if you go to one of the larger, the first rendering that you had with the parking lot, there are a series of parking corrals, or maybe that's not it.
What wasn't shown, you can see, sorry, Adam.
Yeah.
Above, there's a big tree that I was saying shown right there that was not shown on the rendering, just so you can see the building next door.
Yeah.
But you're right, we didn't factor that level in.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conceptual plan, but it was just something I noticed because in the parking lot, there are kind of 4 different areas where I could see street trees or trees potentially going as well. So it's just a thought to kind of enhance the plan and provide greenery, since there's quite a bit of impervious coverage.
Well, yes, and obviously if we will abide by that code like we did.
Yeah.
Just, you bring up a good point. We actually decrease impervious. If you look in the front, what we're showing here today is an additional green area in the front, which today is building and blacktop. And where we're showing the building expanding in the back today is existing concrete. So, it's actually a wash. I don't think it's not shown. It's about a wash from impervious coverage today.
Sure.
So we pick up a little where we're taking from the back.
What we could do is we could call on each commissioner individually for remarks and feedback, and if you do not wish to make remarks, you can yield your time and pass to the next commissioner. That work for everyone? So we'll just start at this end of the table. We will start with Ralph.
Yeah, so are you providing a surplus of parking, or where are you with the numbers for both properties together with the shared parking?
So the history of this, and this goes to you as well, this is actually 3 different tax parcels because it's a condominium. So when we did phase 1, we actually went through a very complicated parking analysis to arrive at parking ratio that was right and that fits. So to answer your question, based on the code today, we would be still within the parking count ratio when you include both phase 1 and phase 2.
So is it exactly on the number? Or?
No, there may be, I have to go back and look, there may be a little bit of surplus.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not exactly on, there's a little bit of a surplus.
You're more on the surplus side. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, maybe 6, maybe 8, maybe 10, 12. I had to go back and look exactly what it is. And it also depends on obviously where we end up unit-wise, but even if we were to max this out, we still have a surplus, yes.
Okay. So I'm pretty familiar with this. I've been looking at it for a little bit. I don't really have a lot of questions. I'll yield to Jennifer.
I guess my only question is with regards to the commercial with the retail. Is the established retail sort of your what you're seeing across the industry for the square footage that would be rentable, as opposed, or is the building unit footprint dictating that more so?
It's a little bit of both. So where we are today, in phase 1, we still have a remaining 2,700 square foot space, and we're having a very tough time leasing it. To be very honest with everybody. Otherwise, it'd be a waste of money. Here for fun, we've lowered our rent. We considered alternative uses and the size is too big. So initially, we had proposed a smaller space here. Because we did have coffee shops that were interested in our project, but they couldn't take the big space. 800 to 1,200 feet would be perfect for a coffee shop, but in our initial just working sessions, we expanded the space. Now, we could potentially narrow it as it goes along the back, so as long as there's frontage along Montgomery, 1,200 to 1,800 would work, preferably closer to 12, just because they don't want that size space. They don't need it.
So I have two like super wonky questions that don't have a bearing on the larger policy, but they help me think about this going forward. One is, you said this is, I don't remember everything about the last application.
It's been a few years.
3 condominium lots, but for zoning purposes, like, is it 1 lot, considered 1 lot?
No, it's all in the same zoning code. It's all
Yeah.
5 big.
I understand that part, but like, for things like measuring widths of lots and setbacks and things, is this all 1 lot, or are the condominium lots actually separate zoning lots? I don't even know.
I can't answer the question, but I know when we did it the first time, we looked at phase 1 in a vacuum. The gazebo that sits outside of Citizens Bank was to satisfy the frontage code there.
I think what we can try to make sure that we ask that question. I suspect that it's platted as 1 lot and you are a condo owner in the overall development.
Right. That just becomes important as we think about it.
Same thing when you own a condo in a building, you don't,
Yeah,
you have to share the property, but not the parcel's not chopped up.
then my second question is, I noticed on your drawings, again, a wonky question, which no bearing on the bigger policy issue, but on the drawing, it says apartment building, but the zoning officer reviewed it as a mixed use building. Is there a conscious decision one way or the other, what kind of building type you would like to use?
Well, because we have the retail there, I think it was identified as mixed use.
Okay.
It's not a straight apartment building. No.
Okay. Because we do allow in other districts, apartment buildings with small amounts of retail. I'm just trying to think of different ways we do things. Okay. A very, again, a kind of small site planning question. This would be the southern edge of the building. Is that the minimum required setback, or did you consider how much that setback should be?
Well, it's funny you ask, because I saw that in, I think it was your review, or it was Kevin Walsh's review. So initially, when we came in, we had just a working session. We had the building up, and it was discussed amongst a lot of parties that they didn't want it encroaching. They wanted more of a wider feeling for the sidewalk and walkability. So we pushed it back to where the Radiant building sits today. So today there's a canopy that comes out, I think, 5 or 6 feet. And that's where we had the building line, but we then moved it back to where the existing building line is today to open that front up for more green.
You're talking about this side.
Right there, yeah.
Not really south though.
But that's what you're talking about, yes.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at your drawing.
Well, let's go, plan bottom corner left.
I'm just gonna withdraw the word south. The side that is, when you're heading on Montgomery Avenue towards Valley Kenwood, the side of the building.
Right,
You know that helps.
Can you zoom in more in that corner?
Where it says property line. on the
Yeah,
left
if
side.
you look and just pull
Yeah.
up a little bit, right? So you can see the little red rectangle, that's the canopy. Okay, we had the building up to where the bottom line is, but then pushed it back to where the existing building line is today.
And that was because,
The discussion centered around making it feel wider and more pedestrian friendly. Because by pulling it back, we could do green or we could do something else there, so we pushed it back. I know that your requirements are to have it right up on the street, which is something we went through in phase 1.
your other building is up against the street,
That was,
as is the adjacent building.
I had no problem doing it.
I'm just saying, kind of a question, but.
Yeah, I did this this was again feedback we received during our first informal working session. I'm okay moving it on.
What would prevent you from turning the whole thing 90 degrees and having alongside facing Montgomery Avenue?
Good question. Because it would disturb the access into the center, into the entire development, and there's an only curb cut right there. Can you just scroll up just a little, please? Right below that red line, that building line, as you can see, comes right up to the curb. We wouldn't have the width to turn it perpendicular.
My recollection is there also like stormwater infrastructure over there.
Stormwater is under the ground today.
Yep.
Stormwater runs underground today. And we would obviously, we did pre-testing for phase one that showed plenty of capacity. And since completion, right after we completed it, we cleaned it out, we certified it through Kevin or knowing who was watching it. We had two huge storms right after, and there's been no issues whatsoever. So we feel pretty confident that retesting it, that our existing stormwater capacity would be sufficient for the project because the impervious basically isn't changing, and we probably have better runoff devices than what exists today.
Is it since keeping that curb cut access or something that Cindy is important? Sorry to place any player here, but did you ever consider making it 2 buildings along Montgomery Avenue with passage in between, something like that? I'm just trying to think about site planning options that would move the building further away from the residential people there.
We have not, no. Because that would also then take up all the parking that exists there today, which we have requirements for the existing retail.
Right. You just have parking in the back too. Yeah. Just means you put it back, but it all costs a lot more.
Well, it's not only that. If you're saying hypothetically take take 2 square buildings, put one on one side and one on the other, that eliminates the parking for citizens and goodness bowls. And I can't do that. I mean, those are like no build areas. I can't do that.
Any other questions? Thank you for answering those.
Yeah, we can keep talking if something comes up again too, so.
So could you point out the 5th story area? Where is that?
Sure. Can you scroll down, please? So these, don't worry, these are just typical floor plans. Keep going. Let's go down one more. And then zoom out, please. There we go. So what you're looking at, perfect, right there. So what you're looking at today is if you're coming on Montgomery Avenue towards Ballard Inlet, okay? So if you're stepping out of Citizens Bank and Goodness Bowls, this is what you're looking at. So there's the 4th story right there. We have 45 feet right on street line, and then that's set back another 4 feet, and like the parapet's 48. And then we set back, like I said, it's approximately 25-30 feet off of the building line, and then bump up and run the 5th floor to where the elevator column would be. And then that little tilde L, we set back down to that 45-foot level. That's what runs perpendicular, using parallel to Shirley Road residence.
So what's on the property behind?
That's 59 feet. That's the top, next time you get elevator, shift.
How many additional units?
So the roof line here is 59. The roof line here is 45. And this is 48 just for roof and parapet and drainage. You know, but that's why we set it back off here. So this is 59, this is 48, this is 48, this is.
What's that little?
This is the elevator shaft. Yeah, that's the elevator shaft. And that's a stairway. But that's allowed. What's that?
To be able to flip those so that the highest point is so close to the minimum.
Well,
There's no windows or noise coming from it.
it's, and was it close, it's I think that the distance of the We can measure what the distance is.
Yeah, we can have a certain conversation about that as we get through.
But yeah, to the point, I guess that rear part, that's the core of the building with the two elevators that go all the way.
Correct. Correct.
Because the lobby is in the back of the building.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, the entrance, so this is the retail entrance right here. You can see like we have some of those in the new building. And then the residential entrance is in this corner right here.
I think part of the theory of your site plan is that the service wing of the building with the package room and the bicycle room and the trash room and stuff is on that, is where the
The existing loading dock is today, that's correct. Yep, can you scroll down a little please, Evan? This is if you're on Montgomery Avenue looking at it. And again, these are conceptual, this is not like. You get it just, and if you scroll down a little bit more, please. So, one more. So this is what the back from like Shirley Road would say. Okay, so here's your 45, this is 49, so if we look at that, 49. And then that's the elevator shaft again, there's nothing there, it's just CMU, and whatever we finish it on. And then that's pushed back here, like 35 feet from now. More from the building line, so that's probably, again, we can get measurements for it when we find out the adjustment. If we're 25 plus 10 plus 35, we could get like 75 feet plus away from the property line.
If you didn't have access to the 5th floor roof as a terrace, would you be able to lower those elements like the stair tower, the elevator tower that goes to the 5th floor? Because you have other terraces on the 4th floor roofs.
The answer is probably not for two reasons. One, that's where the mechanical equipment would be, so we would still need to have a doghouse, as we call it, up there to be able to access a roof for those and for other maintenance. I mean, we have it on our existing building today. I mean, it's honestly, it's that high up, you don't see it from the street level. I mean, we've had two of them actually today that both go up that high.
So I have another question.
And sorry, to pick up for 1 second. And the other question is, the other thing too is, there are still shade trees that exist that we're not touching back here. So there's 2 or 3 really big shade trees, and then you have a couple of pines here. The pines or spruces, they're not pines, I don't know what they are. Pine or spruces that would come out that we would have to replant. To be able to, because they surround the trash area now. And that area gets pushed, we would have to replant those around the back of it. But the big shade trees, we're not touching. We trimmed all those the last time around, and they were part of the trim. Sorry.
So what's to the east?
Sorry.
What's to the east?
What's to the upper left?
You mean behind the building?
Behind where you said it's next to an office building.
Oh,
What's behind the office building?
it's parking lot. So it's an office building. Can you scroll all the way down, please, for a second? The office building is here. It basically comes to the front, and this is just parking behind it. There's a berm there that exists today, but it's basically all parking.
Okay.
But you can see, as you walk out, but we have the stair towers here, we have the elevator stair shaft here, it's not scale, but we already have 2 that top to the building.
Not this building. The residential. Oh, yeah, that sounds good.
Yep. The idea was to put green and make the roof green on the top here, away from everybody. This also would block any, noise or activity from going back, having a stair tower and elevator shaft here, because this would be an outdoor area and we make it green as well. So we push that as far forward as we could push it.
The only other thing I'm wondering is Kevin on the line because he did want to put the comments.
I'm here.
Yeah, can you run through what your comments were?
Yeah, most of it was what Adam had said previously. the one thing that I noticed was that front yard setback being actually over what's allowed. And again, Adam said he was amenable to bringing the building forward. So that sounds like that might not be as big of an issue. There is a minimum 50% frontage build out along Montgomery Avenue, which I don't think he's going to achieve unless those three parcels kind of are very close to the proposed building. If that's including the parking lot and including the existing building frontage, obviously he's significantly less than 50%. And Adam, didn't you get a variance
No.
for you didn't for that? Okay.
No, what we ended up doing, and by the way, I think, Kevin, we'll have to look how we did it. I would think that I actually do comply for the 50% frontage, but we'll have to talk about it. But we ended up building the gazebo off of what's now Citizens. We thought we would get a coffee shop there, but it didn't happen.
Not recommending it, but technically, could you, that retail end of the building, could it come towards the driveway if you wanted to make the facade? The mass of the building would have to change, but even just that coffee shop could get bigger.
Maybe.
I mean, I'm not saying that we want to do that. Just,
It'd be nice to be another try at it.
Kevin, wouldn't that issue you raised depend on what the actual lot, the zoning parcel is?
Exactly, right.
Mhm.
And again, which is really limited time today. These are the red flags I saw going through what Adam had and kind of, we had talked about them in the original kind of sub-informal working session that we had a few months back. So they matched most of my concerns back then. The one thing, I'm just going through mine line by line here. Adam, do you recall if you got conditional use for multiple buildings on a lot? I know you got conditional use in general, but I saw that our zoning ordinance changed maybe in 2022 to add this provision. So I don't know if that was new or if you obtained your conditional use before that. Just something to, think about and we can discuss further later.
I don't recall having to obtain a conditional use for phase one at all. I had to get a zoning
Special
relief.
exception, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So now and again, this actually is all contingent upon how the lots are laid out too. Obviously, if you only have one building on the one lot, that's where the Rite Aid is, and this doesn't apply. And maybe you did some sort of cross-access easement for parking, that could be fine. I put some italicized text just to say, due to time limitations, this may not even apply. The height and number of stories, which Adam also brought up earlier. Adam, you had brought up the use of dwelling units on the first floor, which isn't currently permitted. The one thing that I don't think anybody noticed was there's a requirement for having a proposed retail industrial use, essentially a non-residential use that has to be at least 40 feet deep along Montgomery Avenue, along the ground floor. So it doesn't look like the proposed space would meet that.
Yeah. We would have to apply for some kind of variance or work with you on what the actual revised or retail, because 40 feet by 60, 2,400 feet, we're right back where we started again.
Right. And I think the last thing that this is the only one that I don't even think I brought up at our working session a couple months back was it says no more than 50% of roof areas may be used for outdoor seating and recreational. So it looks like on the plan, you have a certain section that looks like probably pavers or something like that, and then probably a large grass area. I'm not sure if there are rain gardens or just green roof. And I didn't know if they were accessible by pedestrians and would be counted or not. So I just made the comment just to make sure that the usable space on the roof has to be less than 50%.
I think, I'm not sure, but if I recall correctly, right, you can have two buildings on a lot, you just have to have the site plan filed with like a master plan that shows the whole project, right?
Correct. There were two stipulations regarding the master plan requirement for that, yes.
Yeah, I would work my time.
How many additional units do you get?
So right now, what this shows is 42 units, of which 36 are 2 bedrooms, 8 are 1.
The top floor is 6 units.
I believe that's
Yeah.
correct.
I mean, generally, I'm in support of 45 feet and 4 floors. I think it fits with the landscape. On Montgomery, but I think it helps with densifying the area as well. So I'm generally supportive of that component of it. Yeah, are there any benefits that you've considered affordable, portion affordable, green build that would fit the property?
So we would be open to some kind of median household income bonus for a 5th floor. We'd obviously have to put parameters around what that means specifically. I know what it means. You just gave me the numbers. I mean, let's leave the numbers as it is, but you know, how often do you have to measure it? Is there a cap on it? How often does it have to be reclassified? You know, is it a certain amount of unit? Like, we'd have to work on what all those parameters would be in a box, but we would be open to that for a 5th floor bonus. In terms of green, we would like to make this a green type roof. Our existing building, for a whole bunch of various reasons, didn't work out that way. We would like to do that here.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you just actually answered one of my questions, because everybody did on parking and retail and the shapes and all that good stuff, but, so the green roof, no pedestrians would be on it, residents, per se?
I'll be very honest with you, we didn't get that far into programming and access and design. This was conceptual.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is we would like to have some type of outdoor space. I don't know what that looks like with the green or without.
Right. And then just going back to Brian's question, the 5th floor, I mean, assuming, is that sort of what's driving go from 4 to 5?
Economies of scale, frankly. I mean, our existing building is 25 apartment units and 25,000 of retail. And it's in terms of what's the income carrying it, it's almost 50-50. So to build that many units, to build a building that actually works is what's driving.
Okay.
So 5th floor, so the concept being discussed is the base zoning is 45 feet. So to go above that, would there be a conditional use for a density bonus? And the idea is that one element discussed with green building, which would include, you know, an all electric building, ideally, you know, sourcing from renewable energy to the extent possible, or consider solar panels for your roof. And then I think the borough's looking to, if we do create sort of a residential utility co-op, that it would be part of that. But that hasn't happened yet. That's it. And then for the workforce housing element, the concept that was discussed, I think, last meeting is, you know, whether it's, you want to provide the maximum amount that's feasible financially, essentially. But it would be 80% of Montgomery County median income. So you'd have to make no more than 80% to qualify for that unit. And then 30% of that amount is available for rent and utilities. And utilities is a
Utilities are included, that was my other question.
yeah, utilities, the way it works is that it's like, I think it's not my primary area of expertise, but that would include like your electric, your basic household utilities, water, electric, whatever you're being charged for. It doesn't include cable TV, I don't think, or telephone, check. And then you don't necessarily have to do actuals. There's like a table that's an allowance. So if it's $150 for utilities a month or something like that. The tables are updated there by the. So what I was told by one of the members of council was that the county housing authority is willing potentially to handle the paperwork. And if they were not, then presumably that would fall to the borough. And the paperwork essentially that Philadelphia uses is, you know, when you file there's an easement on the property or in the deed, and the you have your floor plans and, you know, you have to have 10% of the units, available under the program, at all times, right? And then
And so that's, I'm looking at my phone, the list of questions I've written down here. So the other question is too, is how are those units split? I mean, if we have 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms, right?
well, since we haven't read the program yet, there's no rule, but so, I mean, that could be whatever the borough codified. It could be, for example, just 10% of units, and so it could be the 1 bedrooms or the 2 bedrooms. But presumably, if it's the 2 bedroom, the median income is based on how many people are occupying the unit. The household size. So as the household gets larger, the AMI actually goes up, not very much.
I mean, I wrote the numbers down.
Yeah, so more people in the unit justifies a slightly higher rent. And then you essentially file paperwork saying what the income of the tenants are in the program
And then so like how often is the reporting?
annually, once a year.
So the residents have to report once a year.
Well, I need to check with the county's rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be, I mean, the county's not gonna do crazy amount of due diligence, but I think you have a leasing office, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would provide a form, that they would have applicants fill out. And then every year we'd ask to kind of recertify and check that form.
Right.
And then if things change, then you would have to maintain your eligibility for this bonus by having 10% of units. So if someone's income increased, then a different unit would have to apply towards the bonus.
Right.
Yeah.
The next available unit would have, if in the way, usually the threshold is it's 100% of AMI, so if they start out under 80, but you know, they progressively earn more, they no longer count, like they would count up to 100% of AMI, because it's the same person, but once they hit the median income, then the next available unit would have to go to a low income resident, is one of the ways it can be administered.
You get there when you get there.
Yeah, and then the, you know, there's, you could go through the complexity. That's a pretty unusual case as well. So, I don't know, the people I talked to didn't seem to think it was that complicated to run, but in part, you know, the city wants also to focus on like advertising, making sure people know that they're available. But in this case, since you have 42 units in the plan, so it's either 4 or 5 units if you round up or down, is what the number would be. So.
Okay.
Yeah, 30% of the AMI is the number that's being used. And then utilities have to be included in the 30%. That's my understanding. So, and then, yeah, it's the, you know, obviously, I mean, the intent is to like with respect to the 5th floor, right? If we said a 4-story by right building has no income restrictions, you know, then that proceeds anyway, but then the idea is to try to get as many housing units as possible with a portion of them set aside as affordable.
Okay.
I had a couple other just, I guess, comments, if I can remember. I mean, obviously, we appreciate you coming in with a preliminary design. Hopefully, if you progress the project, there'll be more opportunities to work on it. Some minor points, like maybe if it's feasible, you could consider raising the patios above grade a little bit.
We did.
Consider the depth of the patios and balconies to be functional, especially if the patios don't really have a limit. So having enough room for table and chairs and so on. The roof terraces could be, you know, they could be great if they're really well done. They could be, you know, high amenity spaces, but also, you know, sort of engaging spaces in general. And then I did think that the Montgomery Avenue facade could be, I mean, better. like the, you know, you got to sort of, I mean, you know, there are obviously limits, but we're sort of continuing the blank brick aesthetic on the ground floor with the way it's rendered for the.
So you came in the last iteration, when we went through phase 1, we went through 6 or 7 working sessions just on the facade of phase 1 with everybody, so
Mhm.
we're happy to go through similar exercise again here.
So I think the long game for Montgomery Avenue that we're hoping for is to have it be more pedestrian friendly, more likely to be business supportive, right? So more walkable, just a high amenity level, good for pedestrian traffic, and of course you have a number of stores on the rest of your parcels. So just how can we engage the sidewalk and make it architecturally stimulating? It doesn't necessarily have to be expensive, it's just a matter of anyway. And I know that we talked about the build to line moving the building closer. To me, it's not, I actually think what we want to do is move the pedestrians further from cars than the traffic. So I wouldn't mind a little more space if we can activate that space with something beautiful, right? Either for people, it could be if it's a coffee shop, like, maybe some outdoor seating. And again, like the further from traffic, the better. It could be a garden space, planting. I would encourage you, I know you have a lot of space in front of the building, and I don't know why there's those accessible parking spaces in the sort of lawn area. Because they just, to me, I'm like, if you go to the train station and you look at the garden that's done in front of the train station by volunteers, it's really, it's just a beautiful, garden space. And so you could imagine, where you have open ground, really not just grass, but something more organic, more textured, right? And so why waste it on 2 parking spaces? And I realize accessibility is important for some people, so that's a noble thing, but how to make that ground plane more pedestrian friendly, more architecturally interesting. Again, in a cost effective way, but and I think that will help draw people into your project to get them to you're trying to tenant your space, right? You have more storefronts, and the more people you get kind of looking into that retail court, it can only help, right? You also think about signage or whatever to try to pump that up. And then I guess I agree with people that said, is there anything we can do in the parking lot to increase shade, increase tree canopy, increase landscaping, again, in a cost effective way, but the setting back of the upper floor tends to be that you can't see it from the sidewalk unless you're a significant distance away to get from long.
That was the idea.
Yeah. So ever since I've been like going around looking at all these other projects. And yes, if you get farther enough, you get 150 feet away, you can see the top. If you're 40 feet away, you can't see that top floor. But anyway, so I appreciate that. Generally, I am supportive of the idea of adding more housing that we can generate. If we have 80 people living in this building, or 90 people living in this building, they're going to buy pizza, they're going to buy ice cream, they're going to go downtown and buy some things. And they're going to patronize even the businesses on Montgomery as well, including on the other side in Lower Marion. And some of our Narberth residents have businesses located on the other side of the avenue. So I think that's the housing part is all too good. And I think that as long as we have enough retail on Montgomery Avenue, it's probably a reasonable compromise to introduce some housing on the ground floor. Any other commissioners want to offer comments?
Well, I'd like to second what you're suggesting about the facade on Montgomery Avenue. I mean, if it's gonna be retail, why not make it and have a green space, why not make it more classy, looking out over a green space? That would be more accommodating, more pedestrian.
You might think about canopies for the rain, or the current building has totally useless, but has a faux, arcade.
And yes, trees in the parking lot. It's so much paving.
I also like that, what was on our agenda is to talk about the zoning in general, and we want to talk about the rest of Montgomery Avenue. And what is unusual about this project and almost unique at this point is that you have a very large piece of land that was already developed partially, which is not the case anywhere else. There's not a parcel that's this big. And so although the die has been cast, you already have this parking lot design. So, and the curb cut, so it's hard to move those elements. The question is, what can we do with the remaining parcel and maximize? So the amount of parking you have, really allows the density to occur without hitting the constraint of where am I gonna park them. Whereas the smaller parcels, talk about it, wouldn't be able to provide this level of surface parking. Which also I hope makes the project economical because there's so much installed infrastructure already. All right, there's no other comments, then or if you have anything for us to consider?
No, it's a process. And this was our, again, conceptual plan on a high level basis, and there's more feedback tonight, and I'm sure that we'll hear some public comment, and I have tried to put together a working session with the neighbors. We haven't been able to come up with a date in the last 35 days, but I'm thinking that we'll be able to find one hopefully in the next 30, where we can sit down with the plan here and have an open discussion amongst ourselves to hear more concerns and see what we can do to work proactively together.
Well, we really appreciate you and, taking that step and bringing it in early. So there's a chance to have that discussion at an early stage. With that, I guess we can close this agenda item. And look at our next agenda item was.
Opportunities for community engagement.
Opportunity. Pardon?
4A. Community engagement opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember, do you have a sense of exactly what that is? I think I know what that is, but I just. This may be, a top, I guess this, to put this on the table for further discussion, we don't have to resolve it tonight, it's more something we need to work on. Or ask, Borough Council about, is outside of these planning commission meetings where public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. And they're very structured and we have business to get through. Should we have workshops in town on the topic of, say, downtown commercial vitality or housing development or zoning, where it's more of a conversation, it's more of an open venue, and we can bring in speakers, just not exactly a town hall necessarily, but more like a town hall. And we could use potentially the Borough Hall or any other appropriate space. And as we talk about, it's, sort of, I guess, the planning process more like we would do with the comprehensive plan, but, having a community dialogue, I guess. I think that's what that was referring to, perhaps.
Well, I'll say, I'm super supportive of that idea. I think doing it in person is much better, like to have evenings when people can come to Borough Hall. I think as we've been having here at the Planning Commission, guest speakers is really important to help us keep in touch with what's going on elsewhere in the world. You've been doing a fantastic job interviewing people and learning about that. It would be, it's great to have those folks come so that we can talk to them. So I'm very supportive of it. I think finding people who can talk to us about innovative ways that little downtowns like Narberth have pulled themselves together will be important. I think not that it's downtown on Saturday, and I was surprised at all the activity. It was like buzzing on Saturday, despite the fact that half of our downtown is vacant. But anyway, we're having people come and talk about housing. That's affordable housing. That's really important. Ways that corridors like Montgomery Avenue are dealt with. That's really important. I'm all for it.
What does everyone else think?
I think it's a really good opportunity, whether it's a mix of learning sessions or speaking engagement opportunities, but also just working sessions. I think if it's organized well, it can present a way for the planning commission and the council to receive the community feedback in an organized structure that's not maybe just relying on those who are posting on Facebook, hoping someone sees it, or coming to a meeting to give input, but not stay for the actual learning objectives that we then typically do afterwards.
Right?
I agree.
We might need some volunteers to help make it happen. And well, I did, you could put to borough council like that we want to do this and we might need some resources, but it will take volunteers to organize and run it.
So since I wrote this to the email, it's complete. Once we finish the recodification, I would be happy to spend volunteers.
Okay, so we'll maybe form a committee to, and we can get assistance even beyond the planning commission. Try to set up some opportunity.
Good would be that.
I can assist with that as well. I'm supportive of it. I also think there's I think the commission, I think we do a good job of communication. Everything's public, these are recorded, you can join virtually or in person. Everything's published afterwards, but I think there is a notion that there's a lack of communication and potentially meeting people where they're consuming news, which right now would be on social media. There's ones where somebody to assist there, or take the summaries or the notes and condense them. I know there's tools in AI where we could throw notes in there and could provide a fairly good summary, but a more consumable version of what we're doing right now, I think could be helpful as well.
Is there any way you can help with that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's a good idea.
And I think it's only a question of what the topics are. When you think like downtown is the topic. How it works. What kind of planners might be out there. But as well as people who do property owners. Have them be part of the discussion.
Yeah, and strategies for preservation of small business, in the face of increasing rents.
And you know, given the experience that this developer is having with trying to get small business into his spaces, I'm wondering what does it take? Yes, so does can the borough assist in some way, then can there be some kind of incentives to get small business?
Yeah. As the meeting public on social media digests and summaries and engagement electronically might get here as well as in person workshops and expertise brought in. Any other comments on this agenda item? So the next one is that the general zoning discussion?
Would you like to?
Yes, I would.
Ordinance.
All right, notes on that.
Zoning ordinance amendments. So, okay, the specifically the intent is what discussion is 5B, I think it is the Montgomery Avenue zoning district. And so the sketch plan for tentative sketch plan for 640 Montgomery Avenue is an opportunity to discuss a number of the parameters of zoning and how they affect development. So to run down what we discussed for that project in particular, and then we'll talk about some things that are beyond that project. Project that we just saw would require changing the base height limit is 45 feet, but it says 3 stories. So it would need 45 feet and 4 stories as a base change. So it's not really a change to the building massing. It's really just a change to how much is inside the building massing, which is another floor. And the existing project is 4 stories, more or less, is there now. That was item 1.
I have injured notes you said.
Item 2 was that the 5th story would be let's see. Item 2 is that there's residential on the ground floor. So that we would continue to require commercial facing Montgomery Avenue. And for the entire quarter, the question is, does the entire facade on Montgomery Avenue need to be commercial, or can it be a fraction of the facade? And if so, what is the fraction? Like, how would we give shape to this thing? So we're allowing on the parcel, ground floor to be residential potentially, but what is the requirement around commercial going forward then? I'm looking for proposal.
I think it should remain commercial, but allow for a percentage to be for residential lobby and necessary sort of like package room, mailroom. So I think there's a similar description from the 5A district. That defines what percentage of the ground floor is allowed to have for apartment entrance.
I think it's low though, isn't it?
I think the basis of the language might be workable, we might need to make it larger, but I do think front facing on Montgomery makes a lot of sense to remain commercial.
All of it, or just a portion?
And or some percentage of, let's say, non-apartment, the lobbies and or service spaces associated with the residents. But not the residents, no.
I was looking for the 5A figure.
I'm using the new codified.
Okay. Good test case.
I think.
53.
Minimum depth.
And I think we could even be more specific, like public type spaces for the apartment structure, as opposed to like, we don't want a trash room, that kind of thing. So I think these seem obvious, but we probably should make that very clear.
By the time.
It's actually written in the reverse. There's not a requirement, it just allows it. So for apartment buildings in the 5A district along Windsor Avenue, the ground floor of the apartment building can include retail, light industry, or office or professional services. But it does not quantify how a minimum or a maximum.
What's it?
The
I remember having a conversation about it during.
Yeah,
what do we use in what context?
or how much retail furniture there has to be.
What has to be 100% retail?
Well, there's an entrance to the apartment.
Yeah, there was an entrance, because I remember having a whole conversation about accessibility and.
I mean,
We allowed for small lobbies, which are like 10 or 12 meters, but that was an interruption in the retail.
I think that for me, I think that would be an appropriate applicable concept
Now-
for Montgomery.
Mixed use buildings also have there's a rule for mixed use buildings. What does that mean?
I mean, my general theory with a lot of this is that we provide directional metrics, but not be overly prescriptive. So, is it acceptable to say that 60% of the facade needs to be a commercial use engaging the sidewalk with an appropriate frontage and all that, and that leaves the balance would be 40% for potentially, I guess, the residential program. And maybe it's better if it's less, but in the case of the building we just saw, it's 100% commercial still facing Montgomery Avenue. The question was how deep it is. But as we go to other parcels, it'll be more of a facade along Montgomery.
I don't think we have an exact precedent. So we don't have any precedents that kind of say you've got so much residential in a facade of these buildings. We do have precedents that relate to structured parking that say a retail the retail frontage has to be at least 40 feet. Um, 40 feet was the best guess we had. It's what the space would be along, and this applies to have, along Haverford Avenue. Because we didn't want people to build like 10 feet deep retail bays and just have parking. Like, we want to have viable retail space. But I don't think that's an exact precedent for what we're talking about. Question parking necessarily. And it's hard because the lot widths on Montgomery Avenue varies so much, right?
Yeah, that's where I think that fundamentally we ought to be allowing the property owners to have more flexibility to respond to conditions on the property and the conditions of tenancy, right? Like what, so there, you know, obviously it needs to be a functional space on a fake storefront, but you know, is the minimum depth 12 feet? You know, maybe it is. Not that it's gonna be 12 feet, but also you could have a regular shop design where part of it's deep and part of it's not.
I think putting a percentage of frontage makes sense. I think 40 might be. Or 60 might be not big enough. Like I think we could probably go a little bit bigger and still work, but
70.
Yeah.
So the intent being to maintain it as a commercial border, basically.
yes.
So 70% of the facade on every avenue minimum have to be partially commercial. And then if we change the depth, if we specify a depth, it would I would be more in favor of shallow depth,
Yeah, minimum. Yeah.
minimum. I think like 12 feet.
Is that the main thing that's in play here, is other aspects of that? The cover, like, no parking in front.
Yeah, I don't think you can park in the first lot layer. I have on the list of things to talk about I just want to make sure parking is one of those things. I just want to like try to see if we can get to a consensus item by item, so we have a sort of like, recommendation, I guess. At least a preliminary discussion. So yeah, I'll talk about parking. But yeah, so the project needed the height limits for the 45 and floors, it needs the residential on the ground floor, and you know, fundamentally that it's speaking to also just the complexities of tenanting the commercial space. And then there's the density bonus discussion, which is the 5th floor being tied to the 10% affordability for workforce housing, whatever you want to call it, income restricted housing units. You know, I don't think that's the economically viable approach, and also be tying it to the essentially potentially the green building standard, which is about no fossil fuel hookups and certain things of that nature.
So the Rite Aid site is exceptionally deep. But I don't think any of the other sites are. And I think that there are some restrictions regarding height, even that. I don't think you can just say.
Why? Tell me more what you're.
Well, I'm looking, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, what other site along there is as deep as the Rite Aid site? If you had 45 feet across.
So right now, the minimum rear setback is 25 feet. So you can't come within 25 feet of the next property.
So you think 45 feet is okay?
If you ask me, I would say yes. The house is 35 feet high. My house is that. So it's a little bigger than a house, but
Yeah,
They can all be 45 feet right now, right? So it'd be
it is 45 now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it'd be additional
25.
yeah, then the 5th floor is even further away. I think the suggestion is a minimum of a 10-foot setback.
But not allowing that 5th floor.
Unless you have a lot depth.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally don't agree, but definitely it's it's an issue. The reason I don't, the reason I want to think that we should discuss it more is like, you know, Montgomery Avenue is a commercial corridor. And on Lancaster Avenue, Ardmore is building 7-story buildings. And on the Kenwood corridor, there's big buildings going up in Valley Kenwood, and it's what's happening, you know, the goal really is to try to create commercial density and vitality in that space. So I don't want the buildings to loom over other buildings, but I'm not sure that they would in this context.
I think if we've had an additional rear setback for the 5th story, so if the preliminary setback is 25 feet, and then if you want a 5th story, it has to step in, you know, minimum 10 feet. So that'd be 35 feet from the property line, which would automatically eliminate a number of parcels because they may not have that, like the depth of the
Well,
parcel.
that's,
may
yeah,
not be.
that's,
So then it kind of does it on its own without needing to,
right. Yeah, so.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so are we okay with the idea of a 10-foot setback on the 5th story? Is that, does anyone disagree?
I don't know what the exact number is.
And where? Or
On
just-
and rear.
I do think it.
Yeah,
There-
we can
in
take a
other words,
look
all
at
parcels are
how many
separate.
parcels would qualify if
Yeah,
Yeah.
this would be good.
it wouldn't be many.
No, there, I don't know if there's any.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah,
So
there
then,
would be
Well,
a few,
there's-
but
there's
the
ones
others,
down,
like,
Same with PNC is. and-
yeah, those are the ones I was thinking.
I'm curious what the Lower Meridian side are.
Well, that's where we probably would like to engage with them, because of course they have some large deep parcels with the Staples and the magistrate building, the Acme, and even more than that. So that's where we could get the streetscape to be nicer. You know, if we could create more of a place.
Yeah, we really do need to talk about it.
Okay, so does anyone disagree with the 5th story being tied to the affordable housing and the green and the setbacks that we discussed, which are 10 feet above the front end?
And also, I think, in some conversations, you talked about acceptable houses.
Well, that would be part of the parking. So once we talk about the massing
Okay.
and use, then we can talk about parking.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, so it's pretty much a consensus. The project we saw has more parking than the zoning requires, and we have a maximum as well, but I mean, it's an existing condition. But basically parking is the limiting factor for these buildings. Most places it struggles to find enough parking. The Elm is 1 per unit, and the parking lot determines how big the units are. It only has the units as that parking lot is. So we require 1 per unit, with the exception of smaller units. 20% of the building can be essentially 550 square feet, I think it is, for less, and they would only need half the space each. And you can share with commercial parking in a ratio, but that doesn't would lower your rate, your mixed use project. It lowers the combined total. Anyway, so the concept is, what if we exempt affordable income restricted units from the parking requirement because parking is expensive? So it's only if they're income restricted, they would be exempt. And what if we lower the base from 1 to 0.7? If you provide the building with transit passes. It's a way of purchasing. Um, and we strike the visitor parking requirement, which didn't always exist, but I think we added a requirement to provide parking for visitors to the building that aren't residents. So those are the three changes. I want to add context that a number of places are striking all parking requirements for residential. It isn't that the buildings don't have parking, it's that the developer will sound the market and, provide the parking tailored to the market, but the government isn't trying to pre-solve every project in advance with a parking rate. Because each space is a minimum of 350 square feet of ground. It requires a permanent car. And the ground is quite expensive, so it's a challenge because of course we do have to accommodate the number of vehicles and so on. Oh, the fourth thing was that you could also provide your parking on a different parcel within 1,000 feet. So if you have some kind of a deed relationship with a different parcel that has a parking lot, you could park off-site within a certain distance of the property. So again, if you have a small property, you can put housing on it, and then there's a bigger property, it could be the parking. And that can be independent of the parking rate. It's just a relaxation of where it has to be. To give more flexibility again for projects to occur. So those are the four things that have been brought up. What time is it? Well, I guess we could, should we go out of order? We could,
So I'd like to respond to your question.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm supportive of it. When we did parking research several years ago, the number about what is being coded, and also we researched studies that professional organizations have done of actual parking usage in areas like this. The numbers you're proposing are very consistent with that. For example, in fact, our own history is that we've 100 Forest was 0.75 spaces per unit. 203 Haverford was 0.875 spaces per unit. This is actually consistent with what we've built. 114 Forest was a little bit less than 1 per unit. So this isn't wildly inconsistent with what we've done in Narberth already. You've talked about the case of Montana, but there are places like Minneapolis, Massachusetts, Atlanta were places where we found where parking requirements were eliminated on multi-family housing or severely reduced in transit areas. This is not inconsistent with the way things are being coded. And then in areas like this, the Institute for Transportation Engineers, who are not the who tend to be very car supportive, found that peak demand for parking in areas like this is 0.7 spaces. Peak, that's peak. So what you're proposing, I think, is really consistent with what we've done, what research is showing, where policy is going elsewhere. Data points from all different directions are pointing in the direction that you're recommending. So I'm supportive of those things.
What else?
I think I'm supportive of the 0.7 regardless of the septic passes. I like the concept of having the septic passes, so I don't know if there's a different way to incorporate it, but I'm not sure if I necessarily care if it's tied to a plan.
Understood.
And then I'm also in support of the remote parking, but I do think that we should then have a requirement about some sort of loading space at the project site. For moving and for, delivery.
No, another data point, I can't resist. The American Community Survey, triennial and quadrennial census collection found that in 2017, approximately 36% of Northwood households have 0 or 1 cars. We checked the numbers in 2022, and 51% of Northwood households have 0 or 1 cars.
1 to 0, yeah.
Yeah, so so what that means is there's a substantial.
We've been selling my car.
It's not that everyone has 2 cars, but it's a substantial part of our population. And I think that, probably means there's just a lot of self-selection going on here, right? People who are willing to live with fewer cars live here. And so there's probably a market for, for these kind of parking ratios.
I know the Elm is not parked up. The garage is
Yeah, they're always.
totally empty.
So and it's complicated because some people might have more than one, and that's where we might also want flexibility about like, if you have no car, you don't need the parking space and somebody else can use it, right? So some people have 2 and some people have 0.
But you're also saying, this is just the minimum requirement. Someone could build more if they sense that their market requires more, right?
Right, so in terms of the technical ordinance, I have like 2 other technical notes about Montgomery Avenue, regardless of rate. Well, with regards to the rate, if we were to lower the rate, we would have to increase the maximum because the maximum is currently a multiplier on the minimum. So the intent is that it gets to be a wider range, that the maximum doesn't come down, it stays, and then the minimum goes lower. So you could continue to provide more than 1 space per unit, if that's what you want to do. And then the other is that the way that the parking lots are built today on Montgomery Avenue, they are, in some cases, I think go all the way up to the rear property line, but a lot of these parcels are very paved. We do allow, I think, up to 90% of the lot to be pervious, which is very high. But we would allow parking within, say, 6 feet of the rear lot line for new development. And then that 6 feet would be a screening between the commercial property and residential property. So if you have a parking lot, you would screen your parking lot. Because the parking has to be in the rear of the lot. Yeah, I forgot, we did the data that showed that it's a lot, a certain number of people. By far, the largest group of people in Norwood have 1 car, and then there's some with many cars, and then there's some with 0 cars, so.
I think Adam, to the early part of the conversation, we were talking about the actual numbers of real developments and apartments that we would see here. When you start applying those ratios, we're not really talking about a lot of cars, flooding into residential areas and taking spots that people are used to having for themselves or, in front of their houses that might not have off-street parking. I think we're really talking about a few cars here and there, and possibly the ability to, let's say, encourage a few more developments where they would otherwise maybe have trouble developing them on smaller lots. That's really what we're trying to get after here. Not that we think that there would be a huge influx of parking on streets that would be adjacent to apartment buildings and taking away spots from people. That's not something that we would foresee.
Right, so in other words, like if you build 15 units of housing at 0.7, that's 10 to 11 parking spaces. So you're still providing parking on that project.
Right. It's not 0. It's a few cars less, which might actually match the the reality of what the numbers are anyway for those that don't know.
Okay, so that was the parking discussion and, were there any other topics for zoning on Montgomery Avenue that we want to discuss?
I have some notes.
Oh, the urban, yeah.
I don't think these are things we can sort out tonight. I think the issues of density and parking and the issues we've been talking about are the really fundamental ones that kind of drive, you know, the development scenarios. So those are the key ones to work out. But I do think, you know, as we were discussing with Adam, the form-based code really looks at building street relationships, and it's not been easy to get right on Montgomery Avenue. It was tough on Adam's property for the first development. It was confounding when we looked at the site where the Price House was, and so I think that, and then we know there are some lots, particularly like Price and Montgomery, which, you know, where the audiology places that could potentially be redevelopable, that are these kind of weird triangle corner lots. And so I think that we might want to look to see whether our frontage types are robust enough, whether our urban design requirements for how buildings face the street are right. I don't think we anticipate in Montgomery Avenue buildings like this necessarily. I also think while the properties we were discussing today have parking that for various reasons is already up against the street, we might want to look to see if that's a situation that we would be happy about in future developments. And I think well, I don't anticipate it would be an issue with this because Adam and Kevin have been talking about it. We got into real kerfuffle with 714 Montgomery because of glitches in the language about frontage lines. And I think that it would be good to straighten out that language so there's no confusion about it. So I just think there's some urban design cleanup we might want to do. But again, I don't think that drives us all. I think that's something we should look at as a kind of secondary set of issues that we would want to make sure are dealt with properly if we're contemplating these bigger kinds of buildings in some locations.
I'd like to have a breakout group on urban design that just does some sketches to try to, you know, explore the issues you're raising.
I agree.
I have one other comment and we'll close this agenda item, which is just the other reason for the discussion around Montgomery Avenue and the sort of planning issues. Because of this discussion, I looked up the assessments of the property of the Albrecht's site. So of course I remember when it was the garden center. When it was a garden center, it was assessed at, I believe, a little over 900,000 in property value. During demolition phase, it was temporarily at 600 something thousand. And then the preliminary assessment on the mixed use building was over $3 million. And then I heard that a member of council that the final assessment may be significantly more than that. And then the businesses pay taxes, the residents pay taxes. And so the Rite Aid is currently paying very little tax as a business because it's gone. But the general intent is to try to use our commercial property in such a way that, you know, it's remunerative and pays for borough's services. Because of course, services cost money, inflation is a real thing. We have to pay our employees and, you know, recapitalize the borough assets. So it may be preferable to have a vibrant commercial corridor than you know, to raise money other ways. So I was surprised that, like, at the end of the day, it's going to be many multiples more tax revenue from the new building at the corner of Union House Lane than what was there before. Okay, well, that is the end of that zoning discussion then for tonight. It's 5 minutes until 9, so we will turn to item 5, which is public comment. I have in the room, I have 5 people that signed up for public comment, and then we'll go online as well. If anyone's in the Zoom, we'll come to you next. So the first person is Michelle Carton from 14 Shirley Road.
Thank you very much. So I do have some concerns, and it's been very helpful listening to everything today, but I do have concerns about building over 45 feet for a few reasons. And I understand the desire to have a concentrated, group of people who will use businesses. But the concern I have is sort of in light of all of the development that's happening around us, not only in Narberth, but in Mount Kinwood, in Suburban Station, there's tons of apartments being built. It's interesting hearing about the housing shortage that you discussed, and yet from my understanding, we still have apartments that are not currently rented, despite reductions in rental. And so my question to you as a council is, do we really feel that this capacity that will actually have these buildings build? And if we build them and they don't come, what does that do? In terms of the parking, the other concern I have is that they're going to stay. And so my feeling is that we are attracting people with 0 or 1 car because of public transportation. But if that goes away, what happens? This becomes a very different conversation. And so I really ask, you as you think about this, is not only Narberth planning, but planning in general, and really starting changing a standard that we have for 45 feet now, and how that could impact Narberth going forward as well. And so those are my my big concerns that I have about this building project. So I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. The second speaker signed up is Nicholas Crosby from Avon Road.
All right, perfect. So, thank you, everyone. Very good presentation today. I just wanted to say, as a young person who is currently trying to look for a place for himself, I definitely would love to see more housing opportunities in Narberth. I'd like to live with my family. I believe Montgomery Avenue is the right place for growth. There's already plenty of unused or underused parking along the corridor, so it makes sense to build homes where space and being used efficiently. Excessive parking requirements take up valuable land that could be used for housing businesses, as was mentioned during the meeting. And they also reduce the amount of they also increase the amount of potential tax revenue that the borough could be receiving with you build more for housing and businesses instead of parking. Buildings up to 5 stories here will create much needed homes, support local businesses by bringing in more customers to make the area more vibrant without changing too much of the neighborhood's character. We've fallen so far behind housing that we risk losing an entire generation, including your own children if you have children, if we don't act now. Narberth's future depends on embracing smart, forward-thinking development rather than holding on to outdated rules that keep progress from happening. Thank you.
Thank you. The third speaker on the list is Nancy Sutter from Shirley Circle.
I'm really impressed with how much you talked about affordable housing, because that's one of my biggest concerns. I have a personal preference for low-rise buildings, nothing above our mature tree lines, but I'm willing to put that aside that's my personal preference. But we really are not, with our rising housing costs or prices and the rentals that are already here, we're really not accommodating the traditional Narberth resident at all. The 2 bedrooms today that are available in Narberth require an income of $133,000 to $177,000. And 2 bedrooms isn't really big for a family either. So I would recommend that no kind of variance or density bonus ever be given unless it's tied to some kind of furthering that goal of affordability. I'd also like to see bigger units. I don't know how you do that. This is in my area, but affordable housing that could benefit families.
The fourth person on the list is Gary Esmer from Shirley Road.
Hey guys, yeah, here, 13 Shirley Road. Appreciate your time. I did the same thing with the Parks Commission this last year. A lot of time you guys put in, so I appreciate that. I got lots of questions. I'm not nearly as eloquent as my friends Nancy and Michelle. I'm gonna start and give you facts. Okay, I live on 13 Shirley Road. I'm at ground zero of your development. Okay. The house next to me just went up for sale because he couldn't take the lights anymore from what we call Coliseum. Okay, to your point, my friend, he's 30, he's got a 4-year-old, no, he's got a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. He's out. He can't take it anymore. House next to them, up for sale, sold. House next to them, going up for sale next year. House next to them, probably going up for sale. Okay, it's not good. We are in ground zero. There's light pollution. There's noise pollution. I look out every morning and I see the woman sitting there having coffee. Why sit in my back porch having coffee? I stare right at her. At night, as beautiful as the building is, there's a Metropolitan, whatever the sign is. It's so bright, it lights up all of our houses. Okay? I would welcome any of you guys to take a field trip and come check out Ground Zero. Okay, see what it's like. 45 feet is colossal. It's huge. My wife and I called the Coliseum. We kind of like danced around how big this building is going to be. Is it 59? Did I hear 76? Here or there? It's way too big. Are you? I'm ignorant, right? Is it blocking out the sun? Am I going to get sunlight in the morning? So, guys, people live at those houses, right? It directly affects us. I appreciate Adam. He engaged us last time. Is the building nice to look at? Sure. But it dominates us, guys. Right now, when the trees, when their leaves are up, I can still see it. When the trees are down, it's like they're my next door neighbor. So what is that, 6 months out of the year? So while we all sit up here and think about different theories and stuff like that, come check it out. It's really not good. I would encourage any of you guys, just come spend the night, sleep in my back room. See the lights that we look at all night long.
Can I ask a follow-up just real quick? When you say the lights, do you mean the lights from the building itself, or do you mean the parking lot?
There is all of the above.
Because the parking lot was been there for a long time, did it change? The lights in the parking lot, for example.
It's not necessarily lights. There's a big sign that faces our house called Metropolitan. What is it called? I mean,
Metropolitan Nova Square.
it is huge. The lights are awful.
We not turn it down and shut it off early now. You guys asked us to, and we now shut it off. I think at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, every night.
I go to bed at 9, so right.
Okay, but we were asked by the neighbors, and I don't live there, but I hear your frustration. But we turned the brightness down, and it was on 24 hours night, dusk till dawn. We shut it off. I don't know, it's either 10 or 11 at night. We shut off.
The other thing, my question to everyone is why? Why do we need to go above this ordinance? Right? You so nicely asked, how many units is it? 6. What are we gonna put, 12 people in there? Right, are they gonna buy 12 more scoops of ice cream? I don't see it. And, we're talking way down the line. If you have a balcony at the top with some sort of terrace and they're having coffee and having a great time, I might as well just join the conversation with my house. Because I can literally listen to them. That's how close they are. That's the facts. Thank
You. The fifth person signed up to speak is Mike. I'm sure.
Just a couple of things, one totally different thing. If you want to know about AI, F&A committee, we do our minutes on with AI, they're great and they summarize them. You should talk to them Sawyer about thing because I think it's really makes our meetings much more accessible. So I'll now put that aside. In terms of the building, I guess I'm a little confused because I see that the top roof line is actually at 66 feet, which is 50% increase over the current ceiling allowance.
Sorry. Oh, I think
If you include
the under zoning, the elevator, and stairway. They don't-
oh, okay.
They're not part of the roof, they're like
Okay.
chimneys.
I guess, one thing that I would maybe encourage is suggesting of moving the property up to 6 feet towards one county. I recognize your concern about putting it closer to the street. I think this is a good example of a little bit of putting the cart before the horse because we don't have the Montgomery Avenue study yet that we've all been waiting for so anxiously. In fact, one of the things that might come out of that is that my main actually is practice in the center so that may or may not be an issue that it's premature to think about. This item has suggested any little bit that helps move it away from the passengers. Area beat to the punch of the one because the canopy is great in spring, summer, and fall. And even I, from where I am up in the circle, from my third corner, once it's winter time, I'm looking at the bright lights too. And it's not just so you have to think about the fact that there's a snow aspect to that. You want to solve that. Canopy is completely solved. I guess one question that surged off the top of my head just in your discussion about the parking was, I think that as builder was saying at the very beginning, actually there's a surplus of required parking. And it makes me wonder if we're even reducing the parking more, because that would allow the building to spread out probably for fifth story. Take out those 5 or 6 units. Building close to that. It does have me a little concerned, like Nancy, for those of you with the council, I'm a very strong part of the housing advocate, so I'm struggling with, I'm very excited by having the bonus. If there is going to be a story to have it be tied to it. But I do wonder if there's a way to maybe trade off some parking requirements that would lobby or get more. That's easy.
We have any online to
We do have some people on Zoom. If you're on Zoom and would like to make a comment, please raise your hand.
I'm just looking, so this after tomorrow, so it's 4-3 in the bottom of the ninth. They're losing, but it's 4-3. They lost. Oh, they lost. Oh. Wait, they're up 5-10? I think they lost. No, they can't.
No, they can't.
It's the bottom of the ninth.
Well, they just won out.
One out. Sorry, Alan.
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
They're also.
Watching the game. Can you slide some of the
All right, so if there's no further comment, I mean, would anyone on the commission like to respond to any of the public comments this time or?
Anyway. So, I'll certainly make it my point to get over to Philly Circle in the middle of the night.
Very well.
Just, but I think, no, I'm serious about it. I mean, I always go visit areas that we're talking about. But, when, you know, I'm looking at the site, the final plan documents for 615 Montgomery, and I do see certain areas of the, back border of the property along that abuts the properties on, Shirley Circle. Some segments are supposed to have deciduous trees, excuse me, evergreen trees. I don't know how, if they have grown up much or what they, but that may be something that would be looked at if there's a future development is screening with evergreen trees.
They used to be there and they were taken out with the development.
Yeah, so we went through with the arborist for Panoni for the borough. And what was, you guys had a lot of shading there, but there were probably about 6 to 8 dead trees that were shaded because they were strangled by vines. I mean, it was really amazing. You had weeds growing 50 feet up in the air. And we took those down because they were dead. Now, we did replant them, you know, with like, I don't remember the number of trees, but you know, it takes a little while for trees to grow. Like we're not replanting them with, you're not with trees, you know, the exact same caliber, because you can't. But we did replant them with recessions with Shade Tree Commission to get the trees. I mean, I don't live there, so respectfully, I don't see the city, but
I'll be dead by the time they actually mature.
Yeah, that's not be so pessimistic. I don't know you're anything about your history, but.
Do we have dark sky?
Well, that's the other thing I was gonna mention. We do have performance requirements for light, the code. One of which says the illumination projected from any use into a residential district should no time exceed 0.2 foot candles. Measured line of sight at any time and from any point on the receiving residential property. So there's a performance standard there. The foot candle is the light a candle appears to give from 1 foot away. I don't know how that translates.
That really clarifies it.
Yeah. My first thought would be test to see whether the lighting is consistent with that performance standard. I mean, that's.
Well, Todd, I'm sorry to break in, but there's 2 questions, right? One, if it's complying with the standard.
Yeah.
The second is if the standard is good.
Right. On the other hand, you know, it appears as a conversation and adjustments, and so it feels like that more positive. So I guess what I'm saying is I think there's ways to explore the issues that you're experiencing and to potentially address some of them better if there's some other project going on.
Yeah, I also, you know, think we should make a, you know, excursion at night, and I'm wondering, I do not recall like why signs are where they are, but you know, so I guess part of it is the retail that space into the parking lot, but it always has. But I sort of wonder if there's a way that you know, it's about signage, and they should be. Why are they facing that way, right? It's kind of they facing a different way.
Well,
That was one story, right? It was well, and so
Yeah.
I think there's also, and yeah, this one's eliminated where all our signals are fine.
Respectfully though, lighting, right, that's an obvious issue, but you can sit in my backyard, you can hear the cars come all day. Do you ever hear like an alarm go off? Like 90 seconds, 2 minutes? Come over. And it happens like, you know, 10 times a day. So there's noise, there's traffic. And that's really not like a full retail space, fitness bowls and stuff like that. I mean, what would happen?
honestly, when the traffic was there, majority of it was and has been rated. They're gone. We've done traffic studies. Our parking count is significantly down. Right, it's gone. I mean, And we counted, I mean, Rite Aid, that was the number one suburban Rite Aid in terms of sales, because they reported to us. That was their flagship. That gave out the number one flu shots in America in 2022. So the traffic that we heard from here was for them. I mean, they've been there forever. And we've done counts to see what we can do here. I mean, just like you're saying, invite me over to come to your house at night. Come to that lot 3 times during the day and see what the cars are.
I live in that lot.
I mean, I'm just saying that my point is, the cars that you were saying are there, the cars have always been there. They've always been there since Rite Aid's there. I mean, Rite Aid was a huge, Rite Aid's a bigger traffic driver than the tenants that were there.
Listen. Come listen to it. Come listen to the alarms. I mean, it's whether it's Rite Aid or the new development or goodness balls or wherever you're gonna
My
call
point
it.
is, it was before the development was there. The traffic was all being blocked. You can do all of us, I mean.
I also acknowledge we received the email comments from
Oh.
the scheme.
I guess, yeah, if you wanna be, I could. Where are they? During the meeting, we received another comment?
No, she sent it to me.
Yeah, I've received a few letters. Some of the emails are quite long.
I think we're pulling that up, I just wanted to comment that, you know, we're considering the higher densities and the 5 stories for the affordable component, but also because we've been having a lot of conversations about increased density brings in more people paying income taxes and also higher property taxes. And a lot of the dialogue that we've received over the many months of conversation has included a desire to continue to have additional and improved park spaces and other services available for Harvard residents. And the best way to do that is to generate more income. And so we generate more income by finding out the right solution to add additional residents, knowing that the average household is not going to be the same size that it was when Harvard was at peak population count. So, you know, the house I live in used to have 5 people registered there, now there's 3 of us.
One of them's 3 months.
One of them is 3 months old.
Still counts.
So it, you know, we have to look at a different way than bringing in that additional population. And so we're having these dialogues and these conversations without making any potential changes yet, because we want to be able to have that back and forth to understand where we can do it and how we can do it in a way that doesn't change the character.
There's been research discussions about, there just seems to be so much building right now, which is one of my biggest concerns is to me, you know, I think people are looking for houses. I mean, my sister can afford to rent in Harvard right now, but she's a wealthy person. So I get worried about the just the scale of building that's happening all around us. Are people looking to rent this much, especially if you lose transit?
Well, so there's a couple, so there's a couple items there, right? So, I mean, the first one is that what we're being told is that there is a housing shortage, and it's in many places in the US, and it's particularly acute in the inner suburbs of Philadelphia, that there's demand for housing. Now, I mean, people may prefer certain housing types, but those housing types may also be out of their budget, right? So it's relying on your home to your budget. But to the point about apartments, of all of the types of real estate, that's probably the most sensitive to demand. If people aren't renting, the building owners start to offer a free month and bring down the rents until they can find a tenant. So supply and demand will correct, right? If there's not enough demand, or if there's too much demand, then the prices will rise. Now, somebody, I'm not going to name names, but someone said to me today, well, that building new buildings could potentially cause existing buildings to raise their rents to match the new building. And the reality is it can be complex, right? It is about supply and demand, and people will pay more there's a risk that rents could rise. The other hand, again, if we have more supply, again, rents could fall. A lot of people that are renting are in a transitional state, so they may have been a homeowner and now they're not. People get divorced, or they downsize as empty nesters. They may be looking for their next property and they're just renting while they wait to find that property. They may relocate here for their job. They want their kids to go to school, to get started, but they haven't found their house yet, so they have to have a place to stay. So there's a number of reasons why people may be looking for housing, or they simply it's what they can afford, or it matches their lifestyle, or et cetera. So the reason that we're looking at apartments and on the commercial corridor is really that the idea that that's where we can get the most housing on the smallest amount of land through density, so that we're not building high density necessarily in the single family zones as much as we are in the places where it's more matched to the land use. As far as again, if there's too many apartments, the rents will fall, which would be a good thing for the renters. The SEPTA, so the project that we heard tonight is not underparked, right? It's possible if everyone started buying more cars that they would run out of parking, but it's also equally possible, we don't want to predict, right? But Waymo could move into our area someday and we'll have robo-taxis, and there could be less people owning cars because now it's more.
Because you don't even have to go there, my son has figured out that's far cheaper to, use Uber and Lyft than to own a car, pay for gas, pay for the insurance.
For incidental, yeah. And I mean,
as long as you can get around to your necessities and then other changes this time.
Right, if you're going out to dinner, you can have a glass of wine or a beer and not have to drive and so on. So that we obviously, the town would be very negatively impacted if SEPTA goes away. We don't expect that to happen, but it's definitely a tough time right now. With that said, that doesn't, even if there was no SEPTA, which would be a problem, we still need to take care of the town in terms of providing a place to live and trying to foster the business climate. So a lot of our trade is on foot, like not all of it, right? But we want to maximize the number of people who patronize the coffee shop, patronize the stores, patronize the restaurants, and part of that will be foot traffic. So they're just walking from their home. So obviously the biggest impact to us would be in returning to work, commuting. Secondarily, probably higher education impacts, because the train station's main use is to take you to work, and people come to work here. So they would have to carpool or drive or so on. So there would be more traffic on the roads. But we would still want to have people walking to downtown. So, we hope they all continue to support adequate funding to SEPTA to replace their trains and secure the future. I learned something from these comments. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the firsthand experience. Like I said, several of us will probably come by. Oh, and then Mike's comment about the height. I had the same thought, to be honest. I mean, in terms of could you spread out the buildings instead of going up? A couple of reactions. I mean, that's ultimately partly up to the applicant. We already talked about trying to tie the height to an affordability requirement, and if we're successful there, that would be this is a very new territory in the space. But the other issue is the building. The site is already partially developed, so there's some constraints on what you can do. But even if we were saying that we could still spread the building out, even with it being partially developed already, to me, I'm worried that the facade could get wider, and so it's almost more.
I'm not sure it's a good idea, that's why I said I had thrown it out, just as I was thinking out loud. I can see some negative parts of that, and then you're pushing it further back along the neighborhood.
Could be, right?
But only of course.
Could be more massing, lower, but more of it. Right. So I don't know, but so anyway. But I think this was a good discussion, and I appreciate the comments.
I would say certainly, from council's perspective, not speaking on behalf of council, but what all you said about the tax base. Rite Aid, as you're about to find out tomorrow night, the loss of Rite Aid as a revenue source for the borough, is definitely gonna have a negative effect and, on our budget. I think it's preliminary, so, you know, you'll see that tomorrow night when we present the preliminary budget information, but, you know, we lose, the real estate, we lose the wages, we lose business, the tax on all of that. It creates real home.
Well. Oh, you didn't win out.
No, you won't. Don't want to give anything we will try to.
All right, if there are no other public comments, we can move to item 6, which is the motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Okay, all in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous, so we will stand adjourned.
My favorite sauce.
Oh, okay.
Oh.